Bridget Jones's Diary is directed by Sharon Maguire, written by Andrew Davies, Richard Curtis, and Helen Fielding. It's based on Helen Fielding's book of the same name and stars Renee Zellweger, Colin Firth, and Hugh Grant. And Bridget Jones's Diary is about Bridget Jones, played by Renee Zellweger, who is a single, clumsy, inelegant 30-something who doesn't want to grow old to be a lonely spinster, so she becomes romantically involved with her boss, played by Hugh Grant, and eventually an acquaintance of hers, Mark Darcy, played by Colin Firth. Now, the fact that I'm reviewing this movie, you can take it as a promise that I am going to watch and review Bridget Jones's Baby, which comes out in a couple of days here in the Philippines. And Bridget Jones's Diary was always one of those movies that I kept hearing about but never actually saw, and I was sort of curious, so I decided to check it out. And this movie really surprised me because I was very charmed by Bridget Jones's Diary, and that's a big thing because I'm not a romantic comedy guy at all. Bridget Jones's Diary is pretty uneven on account of its unique style, but it has a great soundtrack and exceptional performances from everybody in the cast. Bridget Jones's Diary is for the most part a pretty standard romantic comedy with a decent budget, and you can see that budget put to use in the bright cinematography from Stuart Dryburgh and all the production design, which is really solid. However, in terms of visuals, the most fun they have in this movie is with costumes, in particular Bridget's costumes, because a lot of humor is derived from the awkward things that she wears and the strange situations she gets in because she's, just kind of out of place amongst everyone else. But one of the things in this movie that gives this a unique flavor is the music, and not just the score by Patrick Doyle, which is very good, but also just the soundtrack. The soundtrack of this movie is loaded with so many pop songs that strangely don't feel out of place in the movie. All the songs fit the scenes that they're in, and they really seem to be edited specifically to match the rhythm of the scenes. And what I like so much about the soundtrack of this movie is the fact that even if all these songs are really different sounding from each other, it still all feels like you're listening to Bridget's personal mixtape, which really just says a lot about her character. But what really sets apart Bridget Jones's Diary from other rom-coms is the fact that it's so clearly told from Bridget's point of view, and it does come off many times like you're reading something from her diary. The plot definitely isn't always grounded, especially towards the end where I just had a really hard time believing that these things were happening. There's a lot of events that happen in the movie purely by coincidence, and I didn't like that either. But it is undeniably a really fun story, and that's mostly because the characters are all just so infused with personality. There are a lot of characters in this movie, but they're all very colorful and easy to like. And there is a lot of clever and really funny dialogue that's, really loaded on pop culture references as well. And the dialogue here really is what makes this movie earn its R rating, although it never goes too crass, it never goes too raunchy. And Bridget Jones's Diary is a really good example for a movie that really uses narration well. The entire movie is narrated by the title character, but, it really works because her narration colors the events that you're seeing on screen to the point that if you watch this movie without her narration, it would completely come off as a different film. And the editing in this movie by Martin Walsh is just infused with energy and makes everything really, really fun. It can get a bit scattered from time to time, but again, it's just so committed to telling the story from Bridget's point of view that it really works. There's a lot of usage of montages and, some of her fantasy sequences. And this movie easily could have been really annoying since Bridget's entire arc really revolves around her relationships, her romantic relationships, her relationships with her family. But I think the direction from Sharon Maguire really makes everything just feel so sincere. I mean, you have a really wacky central character in this movie, but she's totally believable and she's really easy to root for. And even if you may not completely agree with Bridget, there's an earnestness about her that really makes you take her character seriously. The movie does get too sappy at times. The movie is at its best when it's having fun and doing the comedic stuff, but sometimes it takes a few steps back to become more serious and dramatic and just doesn't work as much when it's in this mode. But the cast is definitely the best thing about this movie. First of all, it's really easy to get invested in the relationship between Jim Broadbent's character and Gemma Jones's character. They play Bridget's parents, and even if they don't have that much screen time, you really just are invested in them because they're such good actors. All of Bridget's friends are likable as well, and they're all very well acted. It reminded me of Four Weddings and a Funeral, where the friends actually felt essential to the story. You've got Hugh Grant here, who is at the most stuck up and debonair he's ever been, and somehow he still remains likable even if he's kind of a prick. eccentric, and Colin Firth is really good at playing this type of character. I also had no idea that this book was based on Pride and Prejudice as well, and you know, Colin Firth is again playing a Darcy, but he's really good, and he really comes across as sort of like this everyman who's really charming. But of course, this entire movie works because Renee Zellweger is just perfect as Bridget Jones. In fact, she was nominated for an Oscar for this role, and you know, she's so good, she makes you forget that she's not British. Like, I completely forgot that she's American. Her accent is just excellent, and her performance is just so committed, even when she has to do like physical stuff and when she has to make fun of herself. Like, she really sells it. In the end, while Bridget Jones's Diary is kind of scattered, I still think it's a pretty good movie, and it's one of those romantic comedies that I actually wouldn't mind watching if somebody forced me to watch it or I just saw it on TV. It's a pretty fun time. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Bridget Jones's Diary. If you guys have seen it, please tell me what you thought about it, and whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.